We got out to a extremely quick start, 21 points on the board before we even knew what happened. And I thought through the course of the game, while it wasn't perfect from that point on, for the most part, we took care of business. Everybody that could play got a chance to play in the game, and it was good to see some of those guys grow as well. And I know as we go through the rest of our schedule, those moments for some of those young guys and having a chance to get out there will be really important, because we're going to count on some of them at any one point in time. It's just the way it works in football. So that was good. I know obviously our opponent in front of us, Oregon State, is off to a 2-0 start. Really impressive what Coach Smith has done in his time there, going back to his alma mater and really not only stabilizing it, but raising their level and finding a way to win like they did on Saturday night. Back and forth game, going all the way down to the end. The decision between tying it and going for the win with one play left. Certainly a gutsy call, and the guys executed and they walked out with a win. And those moments, coaches and players are moments that you really build off of, and I'd imagine for them it was a really big deal. So we're gonna have our hands full. They got a lot of good players, a lot of experienced players on both sides of football, and we do too. And we got to go out there with a good plan, with the right mindset, and I think our guys are prepared to do that. So with that, I'll open it up.
Have you? I don't think you faced Oregon State in your country career.
No.
What with this team? I guess what do you know about their kind of offensive scheme and whether they can run defense?
Yeah, I do know Coach Lindgren. Brian Lindgren's our offensive coordinator. I do know him fairly well. He was at Colorado when I was at Wyoming, and we got to spend some time together. He's a really good coach, and I think what they're trying to do as a team is really play complementary football. You can tell on offense that they have a plan to run it, and then they have a plan to be able to spread people out and everything in between. And then defensively, I know they're multiple in their fronts, but they're sound, and they have a lot of good players on defense. They limiting the big play is probably part of it, but they're going to play a fair amount of man coverage too, which does exposes your secondary, but they got, I think, a really good secondary at the same time. So, and then special teams wise, they've been really good. So I think they got a really good plan. They have systems in place as a staff, and they got, I think, a group that believes in more and more. I think each time out. So, like I said, we'll have our hands full.
Speaking of that gutsy call that you kind of laughed about, Jack Coletto has been a huge playmaker for that team. What kind of stood out to you on game film from him?
Well, he's the Swiss Army knife. He doesn't start for them on defense, but plays quite a bit. And then on offense, he's just a really effective runner first and foremost. And where they utilize him in those scoring situations and those short yardage situations, he's generally going to make it hard for the first guy to knock him back for sure. And that was evident on that last play. There was a guy right there probably at the one, and he basically ran through that tackle. So difficult player to defend. I think the biggest thing is you hopefully keep them out of those situations where it's out there a lot, because it is those situations where either scoring or converting on third down are generally on the line. So they're being very creative in how they're using him, and I'd imagine they've only shown being part of what they're capable of doing.
You mentioned Coach Smith earlier. I know him and several of his assistants have Big Sky experience. I don't know if that familiarity maybe plays in a factor at all with game prep, or.
Well, I think a lot of coaches that coach in this region, whether it's the Pac-12, Mountain West, or the Big Sky, I do think there's a lot of overlap. I suppose it's just part of the ascension is that you're going to run into a few guys that have maybe coached in each one of the conferences. And I know Coach Smith, he played at Oregon State. He coached at both Idaho and in Montana. Also coached at Boise and Washington. So I mean, it's just this region that we live in that a lot of guys end up potentially coaching all three leagues. And I don't know the familiarity with particular coaches or staffs becomes this big carryover. I'm sure there's information shared over time, but I do know there's probably a level of respect I think that comes with maybe like in his situation having coached in all 3 conferences. But yeah, I mean, just regionally, I guess coaches do overlap and get together too. So there's some, there's some knowledge that can be taken from that.
Yeah, I know facing Wyoming last year, facing Oregon State this year, I guess how much is it an emphasis facing an FBS team and kind of I guess preparing for that?
Well, I think what we want to get to with our guys is it doesn't matter who we play, we have to prepare. And I don't think you can take the approach as a player, well, one week we play such and such, and then the next team we play such and such, and now we're really going to try harder, we're going to prepare more. I suppose there's some human nature that creeps into that, but a mature team, a team that ultimately brings a consistent approach each week, they're bringing a consistent approach because they're performing at the highest level each week. The ebbs and flows as far as how you go about your week-to-week business cannot be part of who we are. That's where I thought last week we grew. Whatever we were close to a 40-point favorite, but that doesn't mean anything. You got to go and prepare and recognize that we have things to improve upon. So, this week, again on paper, all that the challenge is much greater, and that's a lot of respect goes to Oregon State, but we have to be who we have to be each week and really attack it and get better. We're going to get conference play, and no matter what the team's record or ranking is, we got to approach them all the same way. And we get into on the road, at home, all that stuff. I mean, we have to go about our business, I guess, is the biggest thing. And each one of these games matter a lot. You only get so many opportunities in college football to go out there and play and prove what you can do. And this is the next one against a really good opponent.
We talked to Jeffrey Manning just about the turnovers. You guys have been able to produce on defense, but offensively, that turnover margin I think is like 0 right now.
Yeah.
How important is it to win that battle on Saturday, especially playing against a team like this?
It's critical. We've been able to get away with it being even these first 2 weeks. And the thing about what happened Saturday is we got the early ones that I suppose were more valuable. We were able to turn those into a 21-point lead just like that, and our turnovers on the offensive side didn't come till later. But regardless, we have to protect football on offense, and we got to still take it away. And we've missed some opportunities too on defense. We've had the 5 takeaways in 2 games, but I'm sure we've left at least a couple more out there. So in a game like this, defense gets a chance to pick a ball off. They better do it. Ball's on the ground. We better find a way to get on it. On the flip side, offensively, we can't turn it over. No matter what the situation is. I know that's something they really pride themselves into is their turnover margin. In a game like this, we have to be on the right side of that. There's just no doubt about it.
Any injury update you can provide any of those guys?
Yeah, Jared's was a lower leg injury that's fairly serious. We won't know the severity and whether we're talking a couple months or just done for the season, probably till they go in there and figure that out these next couple days. So he'll be out for at least a couple months. Lane is recovering, but Lane won't be available to us this week. Garrett Kuhn, I think, will be in some fashion. Garrett was out there practicing for the first time today, so that was good to see. Sabian will be back. He was back today. And other than that, obviously Jared's was a big injury, but we came out of it, really healthy. Besides that,
Kagan's still a ways away.
Kagan's out for the season.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. If you saw him, he's wearing a neck brace.
Yeah,
he's out for
no.
the season.
Figures much.
Yeah.
And so running back rotation, I mean, with Garrett back, he's going to lean on those 2 guys, Elliott and.
Well, I think we have to be really creative, and just because we did something one way last year where we handed it off to a running back a lot of times doesn't mean it needs to look exactly the same way. So what that means, I think our coaches, our offensive coaches, have to look and say, okay, how do we attack Oregon State and put ourselves in the best position to move the football? And the good thing is, while our running back position has become depleted. There's no doubt about that. We got some other guys that can run the football, whether that's our quarterbacks, our receivers, and we have to find ways to rush the football. We've been able to do it these first 2 games, but it's only going to get harder against the teams we're facing. And I thought it was good. We did throw the ball. Tommy threw the ball much more effectively. I think our receivers, I'd say in particular, Willie and Robbie showed that not only can they catch the football, they can do some things after the catch. So, we're going to have to utilize all our weapons, I guess, is the bottom line. And what that means, we got to throw it more. We'll just have to see how it presents itself. But we're facing a front, group of defensive linemen and linebackers that they might be the best group we see all season. I haven't tell on that, but I think there's a fair chance they'll be the best group we see, and we're still gonna have to find a way to move the football.
So if they're gonna stay obviously the day was out in Lane. Was it just Elijah and Marius? I forget exactly who was active.
Yeah, that's probably it. I know Jahari was playing with running back at that time. In that moment, we had to do a different stage of the season with that potentially being our last game. Obviously, we have a lot of season in front of us, but I do think we have an offensive group better suited to spread the ball around than we did at that point in time last season. So we'll see what they come up with. I guess we'll see what we come up with.
And then one more just injury. I know Malik Mullins was missing the first 2 games.
Yeah, Malik, he hurt his thumb in the middle of fall camp. So he'll be back, I guess, at some point. And I don't know that Malik would figure in, at this point with where we're at. We brought Malik in knowing that he was a developmental guy. I don't think we were necessarily counting on him this year, but with the seniors we had, with Malik having 3 years, I think we do like what he showed in the time he was out there in fall, and we'll get him back here at some point, and what capacity he'll be in, I'm not sure at that point as far as being able to push for playing time. So we'll have to see.
And then talk about especially player of the week. I mean, you've talked about him, but he looks extremely, like you said, sure-handed back there.
Yeah.
Just how impressed have you been, I guess, so far?
Well, I think the first game we reflected more on his decision making is what was really impressive, which was big. And then in this game, obviously, getting a chance to get our first punt return touchdown in this program since 2013 was huge. It got us up 28-0. I think that was the last play of the quarter. And otherwise, I think he had a 12-yarder in there. I think he's going to be a weapon in that punt return game. He did make a real good decision on the last one. He fair caught I think inside the 5, and that was really good learning for him. I think given the time of the game, we were going to fair catch that ball. I guess no matter what, maybe he saw it that way. I mean, he still had the ability to let that thing go in the end zone. So, sure-handed and really calm, and I think he's, for us, that was huge. The improvement in the return game. I think he had a couple shots on the kick return side of things, and I think he showed some explosion there in addition to the plays he made on offense.
All good. Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, Coach. A couple for me. When you look at Oregon State and just sort of the overall arc of the program under Jonathan Smith, what have you thought of how they've been able to kind of define the identity there, and what would you define just the overall identity, the style that they play?
Well, I think they know themselves, which in that league you have to. I think to have success, you better have an identity, and I think they want to be a team that offense complements defense, vice versa. They play, I think a physical brand of football, an opportunistic brand of football. And I think they're getting better and better at each phase of the game. And that takes a little bit of time for your recruiting to, I guess, inject into the program, and now that he's at this stage, I'm sure they feel like, okay, we probably fully have our guys for the first time, and that makes a difference. You know, the message probably, I'm sure, has been consistent now for these guys all the way through. They had a lot of turmoil prior to him taking over the job, so really impressive. Just stabilizing that in the first place, but now being able to build upon that. You know, balance on offense, creative on offense, and defensively, you know, multiple, and then, you know, have the ability to be very aggressive if they want to, and they can also they can pin their ears back and get after you with a pretty good front as well. So no, I haven't been impressed from afar, knowing a couple of the guys, but then having to look at it firsthand now, I'm more impressed.
And have you ever coached a game at Providence Park, this venue you guys play at?
No. So last year, playing Portland State at their venue was the first time I'd coached in Portland, period.
Does that change anything? Or, I mean, you know, you're still in the heart of, you know, their state, you know, Oregon State's state, and there's going to be a lot of Beaver fans there. But there's also a lot of Montana State people there as well, potentially making the trips. I mean, what do you think of just that dynamic?
No, I'm excited. I think for our guys to get a chance to play in that venue, you know, that's not play in their home stadium, I guess. I do think that's a good thing. And you know, I know they've gone over there and practiced, and I think in fall, but it's still, there's a little bit of unfamiliarity from their players' point of view. So, you know, not that it gives us any great advantage by any means, but it takes away a little bit of what that feel would be like playing on campus in Corvallis. So, you know, and I was very encouraged by the turnout that we had playing Portland State last year, and I trust we'll have a really good following as we always do. So hopefully we got a bunch of Bobcat fans that turn out and are cheering loud for the away team.
And just in terms of the familiarity, you have a lot of guys on your roster, you know, from the Northwest, and I'm sure there's some crossover there. I mean, I know you mentioned Jack Coletto, who's from Camas, and you have some Camas guys. So, I mean, does that sort of ease the intimidation factor? I mean, how does it influence your guys when maybe they are going against guys that they're familiar with, and there is an element of familiarity there?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I do think it maybe lessens that gap that can be perceived. There is obviously the gap that they're in the Pac-12, we're in the Big Sky. They have 85 scholarships, we have 63. Recruiting is different, but when guys know guys, we have a couple guys that have played in the Pac-12. Jeffrey Manning played at Oregon State. I think sometimes at least that knowledge, it just lessens the uncertainty of what you're going against. Now, you still get guys that are physically imposing, I suppose, compared to maybe what we've seen so far to this point. But I know we play in a conference with a lot of good football players, and you can only still put 11 out there at a time. And I think our guys will have a level of confidence more because of maybe who we are than trying to trick ourselves into thinking who they are not, I guess. They're good, and I think we recognize that. And to your point, though, I do think it does help having some familiarity with some of the guys.
And where this game falls on the schedule, the last game before Big Sky Conference play, I mean, hardly can call it a tune-up, playing a really talented Pac-12 squad. So, I mean, does that just go back to what you were saying, though, just about treating each week like its own and just preparing within each week? Yeah,
I think for this team, this 22 Bobcats team, I think it's been a progression that will suit us well. Having a couple home games before we go on the road, as opposed to if that were flipped. And I think we're a better team today than we were, let's say, 2 weeks ago. And to compete with a team like Oregon State, we're going to have to play really well. So our ability to play really well after a couple games, I think suits us better than it would have out of the gate. Now, you know, we'll turn the page next week and have to go to Eastern Washington and be geared up there. So, you know, it's the next game on our schedule, and it's the most important, and we're gonna go out there with an intent on doing everything we can to win a game like we would no matter who we're playing. So I think this game will continue to sharpen our sword, if that's what you're implying. I do think that. I think competition ultimately brings the best out of you. It makes you more confident sometimes when you can compete with better players. It exposes you at sometimes, and you know, I think we need to continue to get all of that. So this will be a great challenge for us, and whether it's exactly what we need or not, it's right in front of us, and we need to attack it as such.
And last thing for you, you mentioned, well, obviously just look at the statistics too, the tight ends were more involved in the passing game, but when it comes to just overall ball distribution and who's getting touches, how much of it is just play calling, but also how much of it is just Tommy or Sean or whoever's playing quarterback, the reads that they're making based on what the defense is giving them? How much is just a read-based element of the system you guys run?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think in the RPO game, based on who's in a particular position that could get the throw, I think there's some deliberate nature to that, but obviously we could hand the ball off in a lot of those sequences as well. I think in the play action game, a lot of it becomes, you know, matchup based, you know, corner leverage, whatever, based on which guy we're maybe going after. And then there's an element that certainly is, you know, more of a traditional drop back game where you're reading it out and throwing to the guy that you're supposed to throw to. So, you know, I think we want to distribute the ball as widespread, I guess, as we can. But I think we still have an understanding that there's some guys that need to get touches, and you know, I think that'll become more and more apparent as the season goes on. You know, as you know, part of it's just as we identify those guys, but I do feel like we have more guys worthy of getting the ball thrown to them this year than we had last, and that was our aim. I mean, that was we gave the ball a lot to Isaiah, and we threw the ball a lot to Lance. And then there was a big disparity after that, so I think we're a harder team to defend if, you know, those gaps between who's touching the ball are smaller.
Anything else? All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.